You know, right now, we are all swimming in an invisible ocean. It's a sea of electromagnetic waves, coming from the Wi-Fi in our homes, from cell towers all over the city, and yeah, from the very phone you might be holding. It's just this constant, unseen presence in our lives.
So, that leads to the big question, right? Are they actually harmless? I mean, you can find tons of claims online, but they rarely show you the proof. So here, we're going to do something a little different. We're not just going to list a bunch of claims. We're going to dive right into the actual scientific experiments and see what they really found.
All right, so where do we even start looking for the evidence? Well, interestingly, the first clues didn't really come from studying people, but from the natural world that's all around us.
A huge study by the EU looked at 97 different kinds of this radiation, and what they found was a pretty noticeable impact. It was actually affecting how birds and insects find their way around, and it even had a direct effect on the health of plants. This was the first crucial piece of the puzzle. These invisible waves, they clearly have a real biological effect.
And if you want to see that effect in a really powerful way, wow, just check this out. A group of Danish students got curious. They noticed they felt tired after sleeping with their phones nearby, so they set up a super simple test. They put cress seeds in 2 rooms. One was totally Wi-Fi free, the other had a router. After just 12 days, the difference was, well, it was shocking. The seeds away from the Wi-Fi, they grew perfectly, but the seeds next to the router barely grew at all. They just withered up and died.
Okay, so we know these waves affect plants and animals. That's a huge finding all by itself. But it immediately brings up the next, even bigger question: what is the direct, physical impact on our own bodies?
Let's look at something we all do, a simple 15-minute phone call. Using infrared photography, researchers actually measured the temperature of the skin right where the phone is being held.
And the result? A 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature. Now, 1 degree might not sound like a lot, but the really crucial thing here is why it's happening. It proves, without a doubt, that our bodies are physically absorbing the energy from these devices. These waves aren't just passing through us like ghosts, they're actually interacting with us.
And it goes beyond just heat. Researchers found something a bit more subtle. It turns out that certain phone frequencies actually overlap with our own natural brainwaves, the ones that regulate our mood and how alert we feel. This overlap can create a kind of interference, almost like static in our system, which might just be why so many people report feeling more stress, getting headaches, or that weird eye strain after a long day surrounded by electronics.
So we've seen effects on our bodies as a whole, like heat and this potential brainwave interference. Now let's go even deeper. Let's zoom in, way in, and see what might be happening on a microscopic cellular level.
In one experiment, researchers scanned the brains of 30 volunteers. Then they exposed them to common 2.4 gigahertz waves for about 45 minutes, and then they scanned them all over again. The result? Well, the scientists observed, in their words, many changes in brain activity. Now, the study didn't say if these were good changes or bad changes, but it was yet more clear evidence that these waves are actively changing our biology.
And the brain wasn't the only area of focus. Another team of researchers decided to look into the impact on a very different and, well, an absolutely critical cellular function: male fertility. In a U.S. study, scientists took sperm samples from 32 men and divided each sample in 2. One half was the control, nothing happened to it. The other half got exposed to a typical phone frequency for just 1 hour. The results were pretty significant. The exposed sample had lower motility, which means the sperm just didn't swim as well, lower viability, and higher levels of damaging oxidation.
All of this evidence, from plants to our own body heat to these cellular changes, it all inevitably leads to the single biggest question that surrounds this technology.
And the source material doesn't shy away from it at all. It states that many studies indicate these waves may harm our eyes, our memory, our heart rate, and then it brings up the big one: they may even cause cancer.
However, and this is a really, really crucial point, the source also makes it crystal clear that a specific link to cancer is not scientifically settled, not at all. It is still a highly controversial and debated topic. There is no consensus.
So, where does that leave us? We have clear evidence of biological effects, but a whole lot of uncertainty about the most serious long-term risks. To really make sense of it, you have to look at this whole thing through the lens of how little experience we actually have with this technology.
I mean, just think about it. Widespread, constant smartphone exposure, it really only kicked off around the mid-2000s. That's just 20 years of data. We are the very first generations to live this way. So the effects after 40 or 50 years, they are completely unknown. In a very real sense, we are all part of a giant global experiment.
So, given the evidence that does exist and the huge amount that we still don't know, this source comes to a really simple, logical conclusion. It's all summed up by this timeless proverb: prevention is better than cure. When the long-term risks are a big question mark, a cautious approach just makes sense.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. The changes that we've talked about in these studies, they aren't just happening in a lab somewhere. They're happening inside our bodies right now. Which really makes you wonder, 20 years from now, when we finally have more answers, what will our bodies be like? What will this invisible ocean have shaped us into?